The lineups of each of the players. Hawkeye playing Hunter, Druid, and Warlock. A pretty standard array of classes for this event. And we're actually getting the final graphic up for Shamonahe just now, but clearly playing Druid in this first game.
So it turns out he has Druid, Warrior, and Paladin. Yep. Again, I'd have to guess Patron Warrior, and I'd have to guess Secret Paladin.
I actually talked to a number of the players last night, and several of them mentioned to me at one point, they're like, well, do you think I'm crazy because I'm not playing Patron Warrior? And I'm like, I'm sure there's actually going to be quite a few players who aren't. I mean, look at Hawkeye. Hawkeye's not playing Warrior at all. Mm-hmm. And we actually saw Firebat take down Trump earlier today with a lineup that didn't include either Warlock or Warrior.
And it really,
or Druid. None of the big three.
It seems like some of the players who are doing the best right now are the ones that are actually just going out and targeting Patron. Yeah. It's obviously Patron is a fantastic deck right now, but it does have decks that it's a little underfavored against. So
do you think that for instance, we saw throughout the Road to BlizzCon qualifier events, we saw Patron and Druid and Warlock pretty much everywhere. Just this morning we saw the regionals. We saw mostly those three decks. We saw some Hunter. We saw a little bit of other stuff. But those are really the core decks. And then we do see a lot of things mixing it up here. We see Paladin. We see Mage. We even see Shaman. Do you think that in a smaller event like this, playing sort of a targeted lineup like you're discussing is more viable than perhaps in a larger bracketed event?
So I think one of the reasons that is because when you're in a tournament like this, there is X amount of matches you need to win the tournament. Mm-hmm. While if you're on when you're playing something like Ladder, you're against hundreds, there are millions of people playing this game, and of Legend Ladder, again, probably more like thousands, but it's hard to judge what thousands of people are playing versus the 15 players you're up against in this tournament. Definitely. If you can guess that maybe 10 of the 15 are bringing Patron Warrior, then yes, targeting Patron Warrior can absolutely be viable. If you can beat 2 out of 3 decks, or 2 out of 3 people that you play in this tournament, you have a good shot at it going far.
Yeah, absolutely. So here in the actual game, we have Hawkeye's come out to a pretty strong start with a pair of Shade of Naxxramas, while Shamonahe, I'm just going to keep messing this name up. I think I got it right though. He has a Piloted Shredder and now a Druid of the Claw in bear form. So those shades are going to potentially get out of control if the game continues to last much longer, but Shamonahe does have a lot of pressure of his own to keep that from happening.
Absolutely. Obviously, he doesn't want to pop these shades out just yet. He wants them to get big enough, but by leaving them in for so long, Shamonahe is going to get so much advantage in terms of just the damage on Hawkeye's face here, and that can just be enough to lead into actually, we can see it, a possible turn 7 combo if he happens to draw the Savage Roar. And that can be absolutely disastrous and can end the game early.
So if you're in Shamonahe's seat here, you have the option to potentially play basically Keeper of the Grove or Druid of the Claw here. Keeper of the Grove you could potentially play, and Hero Power you could play Druid in either form. What sort of line of play are you looking at possibly doing here? What are you thinking about?
So this is kind of an awkward move, especially when you're facing down 2 Cell Shades that are actually about to go on to be a 5/5 and a 4/4. You might really want to save that Keeper. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you actually have to use a Druid of the Claw, you have no way to kill off this Lothab without being able to use a Hero Power to follow it up. So I think his 2 choices are most likely either use a Druid of the Claw and maybe consider even charging it in.
I was going to say, what do you think about actually just going Druid into charge mode? It looks like that is not the plan that Shamonahe does. But for instance, if you play Druid in charge mode, you actually just attack for 12. You put your opponent to 14. Mm-hmm. And you have Innervate and Force of Nature. You don't have Roar yet. But if he did have Roar, I think that might have been the play he was looking at.
So he does decide to actually use the Keeper of the Grove, which, again, he wanted to wipe that Lofa about the board. But the issue is now, how are you going to answer these Shades if, again, this may be the turn that Hawkeye wants to pop them out?
Mm-hmm. Well, those Shades are getting real scary. One tool that Hawkeye does have here is the Sylvanas, and he did just see Shamonahe play a Keeper of the Grove to deal damage. Makes it that much more unlikely, or that much less likely, depending on the terminology you want, that he can actually deal with the Sylvanas with the silence effect. And given that Shamonahe has a pretty significant board, Sylvanas seems like it could be a real threat.
Mm-hmm. So taking a look at Hawkeye's hand, obviously, or like you said, Sylvanas could bring him back into the game, especially losing Keeper of the Grove. But Sylvanas is a very passive card. It doesn't put out pressure. It doesn't gain you back board that turn. Sylvanas is something you want to look ahead a few turns and see how it can affect the game going on. But when you're in a Druid mirror match like this, Force of Nature Savage Roar comes out and it's over. You can just ignore the Sylvanas and just keep going face.
Yeah, and I really like this play from Hawkeye here. He uses the Death Rattle trigger of the Unstable Ghoul to take out the Druid of the Claw along with the swipe and hero power. So he's able to get just a little bit of extra damage there to allow him to actually get all that down off the board. And
we do say Shamonahe going
there
with
we go. There's
turn
the roar.
7 Innervate combo to end the game.
He actually just finds it and just has the one minion left over, and that is exactly lethal. So wow, from those two shades looking to get out of hand to the game just instantly ending, Shamonahe does get off to a 1-0 lead.
Exactly, and Hawkeye still has one of his shades stealth. He wanted to hold it, but he had the option of actually killing off that Keeper of the Grove.
He did.
But like we saw, kind of trying to let it grow a little too much.
Yeah, and that's one of the risks of trying to sort of maximize value of your shades. You end up taking a little bit extra damage. You end up leaving your opponent with one more threat. And I mean, his opponent has to have not only combo but innervate as well.
Combo.
So if he did attack with his shade, he's leaving his shade potentially open to both of them getting killed by swipe, potentially killed by wrath. So it's a tough spot for sure. And he ended up getting sort of blown out by the one combination of those 3 cards out of the 4 or 5 that Shamonahe had available to him that turn. So
exactly, he was in a position where he had to play the odds. He played was most likely, or really something that was very unlikely. And unfortunately, Shamonahe had exactly what he needed to close that game out.
Yeah, so in a lot of cases, people look at that and like, oh, you should have done this because you lost to this. But you can't. You're going to win less by playing not to lose in many cases. You're in the long run, that game played, say, a dozen times, it's actually probably true that Hawkeye's line of play is the most likely one to win the game from that spot by not revealing his shade.
And we'll see from someone like Hawkeye, who is a relatively well-known pro in the scene, that he's very likely just to keep his composure. He knows that, even though he lost, which is very tilting for some players, but he lost playing the correct way. He played the odds, and he just got a little bit unlucky. That's not going to be something that really should tilt a professional player like him. So I expect him to go into this game, the future games, playing to the best of his ability.
I've actually said to a number of people who ask me, how do you sort of keep your composure in these situations? How do you just sort of laugh off bad luck? And what I'd like to say is, if you want to play card games competitively, you have to get really good at losing because you do it a lot. People like to think that you're a professional player. You expect to win. It's like, well, you expect to win more than you lose, but you still lose a lot.
Exactly. That's why the more tournaments you enter, the more games you play, the more often you play, the more you actually realize of the kind of separation between player skill levels.
It's particularly true in an event like this where there are so many strong players. When we talk about, you lose a lot when you're a great player, it's like, yeah, you lose a lot when you're playing against other great players. Of course there's elements of luck in Hearthstone, and a great player can lose theoretically to a player who just started playing if they get, if things go poorly enough for them. But realistically, the better player wins more often, but this event is full of great players. So someone's got to lose in every matchup between 2 players who are excellent at the game.
Exactly, and when you're at this level, one small mistake from one of these professional players where when you're playing for a $10,000 first prize, it's very easy to let the nerves get you, to overlook something, to have your mind a little cloudy from a little bit of the stress, being tired after multiple games throughout the day, that a small mistake that most people won't even realize could have been a mistake could cost you the game.
And back in this actual game, Shamonahe sets up the muster for battle, but but Hawkeye has at least the house. Get confused on who's who for a second, but then Hawkeye clears off this last recruit with his creeper, and now he knows a little bit of information. He knows that secret is not noble sacrifice. And that's one of the things playing against the Paladin deck. You have to sort of go by process of elimination. It's like, okay, well, I did this, and secret didn't trigger, so it's not this card. And now he's played a minion. He's okay, this isn't repentance.
Exactly. So right now, Shamonahe doesn't seem to be in all that great of a position. Obviously, Divine Favor, he has too many cards in his hand. This is one of the cards that actually recently has been cut from a lot of Secret Paladin decks. because in the meta, obviously Handlock is great, but when you're up against Hunter, when you're up against other Secret Paladins, you rarely actually get a very valuable Divine Favor. It just sits in your hand.
I do think that in the tournament format, I think Divine Favor is generally stronger than it is on ladder right now. Because Divine Favor on ladder, when you are playing against a lot of other Secret Paladin decks, you're playing against a lot of Hunter decks, maybe even Zoo decks, though I do think that Handlock's even more popular than Zoo on ladder right now, which I never would have thought possible. But in the tournament format where you expect to face a lot of decks like Handlock, even against Druid, it's a card that, because the Druid decks are using cards like Ancient of Lore to draw, you're getting a lot of value out of it.
But here we go. We get to see the Christmas tree of Mysterious Challenger come down.
Speaking of getting a lot of value, Mysterious Challenger comes down on 6, and we see, the full Christmas tree.
I was going to say, it's a few months early for Christmas. Did it come early?
I mean, or the Riddle. I've been watching Gotham lately.
Oh, great show.
I really enjoy the sort of suggestions of future villains and things like that. And I actually think Edward Nygma is one of my favorite characters. How they have him as a sort of these constant references to the Riddler and everything. It's great. And here he is, in the flesh, or at least in the digital flesh, whatever that means.
So now it's kind of an interesting turn from Hawkeye. I'm sure at this point he knows exactly what every secret is. But this is where it comes down to ordering everything correctly.
Right.
And
so Noble Sacrifice is triggered by the first attack. That's going to trigger Avenge, which will buff the challenger, as well as triggering Redemption. These names are so similar, it always kind of throws me off sometimes, which will bring back the 2-1. But then Hawkeye can just go face. He can kill that last guy and send the rest face and play a trap, which is going to leave that Mysterious Challenger stranded.
Exactly, and I think that's exactly what he's going to do. He realized that he is the aggressor in this matchup, especially when Shamonahe doesn't get the early board that Secret Paladin usually likes to get, and just goes Smork. So really, all you need to do as a Hunter. You do not let the Paladin get early board control. The Unleash the Hounds really helped him regain it at the beginning, and now he has the ability just to finish his game off as quickly as possible. Yes, he's facing down a 10-9 minion, but if that's going to be taken up by a freezing trap, it doesn't really mean all that much.
And here, Shamonahe, he's just saying, okay, if this is freezing trap, you win. He's in a position where he loses if his opponent has the freezing trap, but he has to play into it. He has to say, okay, well, maybe this is snake trap, maybe this is explosive trap, maybe it's bear trap. But unfortunately for Shamonahe, it is not. And Hawkeye is able to even up the series 1-1. So now Hawkeye has won with his Hunter deck, and Shamonahe has won with his Druid deck. So we're going to see that Secret Paladin deck again.
Yes, and I'm excited for that.
I believe we're going to see Warlock deck again. It was one of the decks that Hawkeye had as well. So we're getting into the game, not quite yet Warlock. We're seeing the Druid deck from Hawkeye against the Secret Paladin deck from Shamonahe.
Now, what is your opinion on this matchup? I've always been a personal fan of the Secret Paladin, just based on the fact that he can get a very early board presence and curve out to the Mysterious Challenger, sometimes to the Dr. Boom, to the Tyrion, depending on what version of the deck he's running.
This in my experience, has been a matchup that definitely favors the Secret Paladin deck. The Druid is a deck that plays very well from ahead, but plays pretty poorly from behind. And this is a matchup where the Druid deck can be very easily put behind, thanks to Dr. Six, as people call him, or even just a powerful start with things like Blessing of Kings or Avenge on minions. The Druid's ability to actually use its removal on a lot of the early stuff can be mitigated by things like Avenge, things like Noble Sacrifice against the hero power and things like that.
And we see that Shamonahe actually has the best early game card against this type of Secret Paladin deck. It's very difficult for the Secret Paladin to actually have an answer right away to this Darnassus Aspirant. So the ramp will kind of allow Hawkeye to have a few options to possibly regain board control and deal with these Haunted Creepers that are currently on board.
Darnassus Aspirant is kind of like Mech Warper in that way against Paladin decks, in that it is a difficult minion for them to actually deal with when they really need to. Mech Warper will have a very similar sort of effect to Darnassus Aspirant in a lot of games by generating this powerful ramp ability. But here, Shamonahe does have a great answer with the Coghammer, which it looks like he is briefly debating and decides to go with. So Coghammer takes out the Darnassus Aspirant, and that is a buffed up little spider right there.
But here comes Keeper number 2, probably.
Yeah, that Keeper is pretty high value. It will remove the Divine Shield and the Death Rattle ability of the spider, and then Hawkeye will be able to take it out. It does leave Hawkeye open to potential future effects like Blessing of Kings. He no longer has a great way to deal with Tyrion, but he's got to deal with what's happening right now.
Exactly, and we see that Shamonahe doesn't have that great of answers. He's probably going to hit, use the muster for battle, take the 1/1s, and hopefully try to regain some board presence with this. But he's running out of steam. Once again, he's probably going to do his best to get this Divine Favor off very soon. But as Dr. Six kind of comes around, Hawkeye is going to do whatever he can to maintain board presence. That way, when the Mysterious Challenger does drop, he has ways to answer it.
And so now Hawkeye has to be wondering, okay, well, what is the secret? He thinks maybe it's competitive spirit, probably, but he's going to get kind of gotten pretty badly by this Repentance. He spends 5 mana on his Druid of the Claw, but that's going to die immediately. Ooh.
And the top deck Lothep from Shamonahe, that is big.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty big draw. And on one of our screens, it's actually just sort of floating aerially. It's it's a flying Lothep. You don't see it though. But anyway, this is an interesting decision whether he uses his weapon or his minion to actually take out that Druid.
Do you have any preference of either or right now?
Well, the minion is unlikely to actually have a significant impact, particularly given that you just played Lothep. The Druid doesn't have that many things to actually do on 6. So it's pretty likely that he'll be able to use the hero power. And yeah, we see Shamonahe value his life total, value his health more than his minion, which I think is correct.
So one of the reasons you could have actually thought about, or how I personally was thinking about it, was to use the weapon to knock it off. Yes, you take a bit more damage, which is a very dangerous thing against Druid, but it sets up so that way if the Keeper does kill off your 1/1 being at 2 health, you have the Mysterious Challenger coming down, so if Keeper of the Grove is the first one to attack, it will actually die to the Noble Sacrifice.
I think the problem is that your opponent is very likely to use their hero power, that if he plays something like, as we just saw, a Shredder, or if he plays something like a Shade, he's going to have that 2 additional mana left over, and you're going to get very little impact out of saving your minion compared to the damage that you take from the weapon.
No, we're actually going to see a great play by Hawkeye if he notices it. The fact that he can swipe off this Lotheb, the Avenge will actually has to trigger on this Mysterious Challenger, and then Big Game Hunter will be able to take it out.
It looks like he's going for the attack first, so he's triggering the Avenge originally. Triggering the Avenge Repentance right away.
So I'm sure he's hoping for it to be on Mysterious Challenger.
If it goes on Challenger here, this is a huge swing. Ooh,
it hits a Lotheb. It'll still allow him to actually use his Big Game Hunter, though.
It does. And Redemption picks up the 2/1. So yeah, Big Game Hunter will take out Lotheb. And then we're still going to see Innervate Swipe.
And this will clear
we're
the
going to
board.
trade off with the Shredder. So this is, given the state of that board at the beginning of this turn, Hawkeye was able to deal with it very effectively.
But coming up, Shamonahe does have a Tyrion for turn 8.
And Hawkeye gets, I think that's about the worst possible minion off of, stat-wise at least. There's very few worse ones. I mean, obviously you can get a Novice Engineer, but getting a 1-power minion off of a Shredder is a really rough result.
It's definitely not fun. But the problem here is, does Shamonahe use his hand in order to get 1 card of Divine Favor? Or would you rather just have the 1/1 minion here?
This is always a kind of awkward situation with having Divine Favor in a deck with cards like Mysterious Challenger, Dr. Boom, Tyrion. When your Divine Favor is good, it's really good. But in situations like that, it is very rough.
Mm-hmm. So Shamonahe really just wants to set up some type of board. Obviously, he's not going to have much, but anything to go along with that Tyrion on turn 8.
He actually can't play the Owl and his Divine Favor, so he has no way to actually sort of empty his hand to actually even get a card at all.
Exactly.
So he does have. I think he's debating on whether he wants to use his Lights Justice this turn.
But another question is, do you even use the Owl at this point just to have another 2/1 minion on board?
I think when you're facing a deck that could potentially have cards like Ancient of War, it could have even just other Shredders, anything like that, I think that your Owl has a pretty high value, particularly compared to the possibility of just running it into your opponent's hero power or the Lancer that's already on the board.
So the hero power goes straight into the Noble Sacrifice, leaving him up with the 1/1 still. But now, knowing that Hawkeye has used both Keeper of the Groves,
and
this
Tyrion
is going to do a lot of damage.
Shamonahe is putting his faith in the light, and he's still pretty high in life, but Hawkeye he has Force Roar in hand and just picked up Druid the Claw.
Wait, is this
I
lethal?
think it may still be lethal.
Yeah, Hero Power to the 6/6.
Hero Power to the thing. Yep, I think this is actually
Big
just
Game Hunter
barely
to kill
enough.
it off.
Yeah, he's able to use his face to take off the Divine Shield. 6 damage from Big Game Hunter knocks down Tyrion. And then this is exactly 17. So the Force Roar does, despite Tyrion coming down, close out the game with exactly lethal.
Wow, what a game by Hawkeye. Actually, what a game by both players.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about how this is a matchup that can be difficult for the Druid when they do fall behind, but Hawkeye was able to keep up pretty much every turn. He had a great response in the Serious Challenger turn. He was able to use the Big Game Hunter to deal with the creature that got buffed by Avenge immediately, as well as just clear off the rest of the board. It was that was probably the key turn of that game.
Exactly, and it was very obvious that Hawkeye knows how to play against that Mysterious Challenger board. He did whatever was necessary to have a board presence ready for when that Mysterious Challenger came down, so that way he could effectively answer the secrets, being able to have that Big Game Hunter to kill out that buffed up Lothab. If he did the Mysterious Challenger itself, he could have done the same thing. And then having the swipe into the Shredder to actually completely kill it off.
I actually think that the play that you suggested might have been a little bit better. He actually could have ensured that he was able to just keep his Shredder in play as well if he swiped the Lothab first, then used his Big Game Hunter, and then he'd be able to trigger the Noble Sacrifice, but just wipe the board and keep his Shredder. But he was still able to find the play that gave him a strong board presence and denied his opponent's most powerful turn.
Now this is a new sight for this tournament.
Wow.
We are looking at a Zoo deck from Hawkeye.
These are 2 new decks. Look at Shamonahe's hand.
Oh.
That's okay. So I don't want to be biased, but I'm rooting for Alex Strauss's champion. Mostly because
because dragon.
It has the word dragon on it. It may not be a dragon itself, but it says dragon.
So it's an imposter. How can you not be mad at it?
I mean, it is the champion of the dragons. For the Lightbinder. That's like actually or it's Lifebinder, isn't it? Yeah.
And this is a great
I should say that every day,
turn
as soon as I wake up.
A charge Alex Strauss's champion against a Voidwalker. There really cannot be something better than that.
I mean, this is... So Alex Strauss's champion, in some capacities, is kind of like additional copies of Fiery War Axe. It gives you more ways to interact with the opponent's board early in the game that can also go to your opponent's face. Mm-hmm. It's less efficient in terms of dealing with things that are similarly sized. Obviously Alex Strauss's champion can die, whereas Fiery War Axe will not. But this isn't going to happen to a Fiery War Axe right here.
And he goes. Hawkeye decides to go for the Implosion just to wipe the board and to kind of build a little board presence for himself. The problem here is, does he have a way to deal with this Twilight Guardian that might come down? However, Shamonahe might decide to use the Death Bite in order to kind of set up a board clear. What do you think you would go with in Shamonahe's position right now?
I mean, I kind of like just playing the dragon, mostly because it's a dragon, but also because you're putting your opponent in a situation where they have to deal with a 6 health taunt in order to actually make any progress on you. If you play the Death Bite, you're either using a charge in your opponent's face or attacking a 1/1, and that's just not a particularly exciting position.
Absolutely. Now going back to Shamonahe, he has a few options. Again, he has Brawl. He could attack into the Egg and Brawl, but that just doesn't seem very comfortable. His other option is set up the Death Bite, get ready for that Death Rattle to set up and kill off all the imps. Or he could even Azure Drake, just keep cycling and find the cards he needs.
This is Voidcaller out of Demon Zoo is kind of not quite as scary as it is out of Demon Handlock, because there are generally quite a few small minions that can actually fall out of the Voidcaller. Mm-hmm. But it looks like Shamonahe is not gonna do any of that. He's actually just going full Smork. He is playing Garrosh after all, who is in fact an orc.
And we do see that Hawkeye's already at 20 health, which is rare for a Control Warrior to be doing against Zoo.
Well, Dragon Warrior does play a little bit differently. We did see Alex Strauss's champion come down, get a hit in, and then get another hit into the face. So the Dragon Warrior deck does play a bit more proactively. Generally, you won't see a minion coming out in turn 4 that's going to be able to attack the face out of most Control Warrior decks. So the dynamic does shift a little bit, and you have slightly less strong control elements in a deck like this. You have things like Bearinged that can kind of lock up the game once you get to that point. But you do have the ability to pressure your opponent's life total much more effectively.
No, we seem to have a bit of kind of an awkward turn. Hawkeye has a lot of options about how he wanted to go about this turn.
Yeah, and this is ultimately actually going pretty badly for Shamonahe. The Voidcaller and a couple of imps are able to take down the Drake, and now we see Sylvanas come down.
This is like the
fine spot.
This was the anti-Deathbite Argus. He put it perfectly, so that way none of his minions had 1 health.
Right.
So that way the Deathbite Whirlwind does nothing. And the fact that he would actually have to use a Deathbite on a 2 health minion to wipe it off the board is by no means optimal.
I mean, here, so Hawkeye has some interesting choices here. His Implosion's not very exciting because he is facing down that Deathbite. He might want to potentially play. I can see Loatheb as a possibility. It does turn off things like Execute, which could be powered up by the Deathbite on one of his large minions. But he is facing that Sylvanas. And playing big minions into a board that contains Sylvanas never feels good. And we know that Shamonahe has that Brawl in his hand. So if Hawkeye does sort of try to play, to use his taunts to defend other minions and just try and push damage to face, not only is Shamonahe at 30, so it's not necessarily likely a winning play, but there's also the Brawl in hand, which can go along with the Sylvanas to just really swing the board back in Shamonahe's favor.
Now, normally one of the good answers to Sylvanas is actually using your Implosion and make it so it only steals an imp. The only problem right now is Shamonahe does have a developed Deathbite, so even if it does take an imp, the rest of your imps are just getting killed off the Whirlwind effect. So it makes kind of an awkward spot that...
All right, so Shamonahe makes a pretty quick play here. He just uses his Sylvanas to clear the buffed imp and play a Shield Maiden. He does have that Brawl in hand, as we mentioned a moment ago, so he can kind of play this game a little bit slow here, especially with the Sylvanas on board, and know that he has this insurance policy waiting.
So do you think that Hawkeye actually just wants to be the one to kill off the Sylvanas, choose what he gives his opponent, or do you think he might just keep going face at this point?
He did just draw Ironbeak Owl, so he can use that Ironbeak Owl to silence the Sylvanas and potentially get rid of that threat. And it looks like that's exactly what he's doing. Silencing the Sylvanas, and is he implosioning as well?
But again, here's the issue with the Implosion. It gets 4, but unfortunately it can't put the minions down. But this is just so weak to Deathbite currently. It's going to wipe almost the entire board.
That was an unusual choice in my mind. That Implosion is not generally going to be a very strong card in this sort of matchup anyway, because things like Brawl, things like he doesn't know his opponent has Baron Geddon, for instance. But here he's actually just walking it into the Deathbite. So Shamonahe has to be wondering what's up. Is there some sort of big demon hiding behind this Void Caller? He's got to be wondering what that sort of play represents here.
You do have to be a little bit scared of Mal'Ganis.
Oh, yeah, I'm always scared of Mal'Ganis. My opponent plays Bane of Doom. There's Mal'Ganis. I'm scared.
But for the last turn, maybe Hawkeye was more just using the Implosion as the 3 damage to kill the rest of the Sylvanas, and not as much as bringing out the minion you want.
And now Shamonahe, he has, it looks like he's thinking of playing this Azure Drake.
And Coin and Shield Slam, or Hero Power Shield Slam will wipe off one of these minions.
I don't know if he really wants to do that. I mean, neither of these minions is super threatening. He is choosing, it looks like, to go with the Shield Slam on the Void Terror, leaving him with the biggest minion on the board right now. And speaking of big minions, there's Dr. Boom.
And we see a Big Game Hunter in the Zoo deck. What's your opinion on that?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, both players with Big Game Hunter here. I have to imagine that both players were suspecting they would face a lot of handlock if both of them are playing Big Game Hunter. It's obviously much more of a common card in a deck like Control Warrior or Dragon Warrior, whichever one. And that's
do you think this is the Brawl turn? Hit the egg, Brawl, and whatever's left you can. Okay.
Looks like he thinks that he can get a better spot for Brawl here. Goes with Bash to kill the Nerubian. And is keeping Brawl in reserve.
Okay, I do actually like that move. Saving it just in case he really ever runs into trouble in the future. But now he's at a point will Brawl ever be a good card from this point on? He almost has board control himself. He might never actually get an opportunity to get a valuable Brawl coming up in the future.
That was a good bomb hit, and that's
a perfect bomb hit.
One good bomb hit deserves another, and now Hawkeye's pretty far ahead in this board.
Now the question is whether or not Hawkeye wants to actually use the Imp Gang boss, so he no longer has a demon in hand.
I think so. I mean, the real reason that you would hold Imp Gang boss in your hand is potentially you want to play around Brawl. But the problem is that if you
Nefarian, let's see what he gets.
This is like my favorite card in Hearthstone. Demon Wrath. The perfect answer to a board full of demons.
He was definitely hoping for Sack Pack there. That would be too good.
Oh, so this is a second power overwhelming. We see seven damage on the board, so it's 15. He's still pretty far from being able to actually take out take out Shamonahe here, but he does have that big game hunter, which is going to answer Nefarian.
Is going to get a lot of value.
You see a little crinkled nose there from Shamonahe. He was not happy to see his Nefarian get big game huntered by a Zudak.
Now, do you think Hawkeye actually he ends up doing it, holding onto the Flame Imp, just in case of a brawl in the future?
And I like that. He has such a strong board here that he has to imagine, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen to me? Oh, and he's debating that. Demon Wrath doesn't kill those.
Nope. He's still going to do it to kill. Actually, that's actually not that bad because it doesn't hurt the Imp Gang boss, so it doesn't summon any more minions.
Yeah, he is able to take out 2 of the minions with Demon Wrath, but he is still facing down the Imp Gang boss and the Flame Imp. So it's an Imp themed deck that we're seeing here from Hawkeye.
Would you throw out the Armorsmith here?
I think it's totally reasonable play. Armorsmith is not going to really necessarily get significant value as the game progresses, and here you can potentially incrementally gain either like protect your health a little bit and also enable that execute. If you just hold that minion in your hand,
and there it is. There is the Mal'Ganis.
So that's really scary because while Shamonahe does have Brawl in his hand, with that number of demons in play, the Mal'Ganis just actually represents a ton of damage right off the bat.
Exactly. With 3 demons in play, that right away is an extra 6 damage. It's a power overwhelming and a half. Plus, on 10 mana, you actually can use that other power overwhelming. So if Shamonahe cannot find a way to deal with these minions, he could be facing down lethal next turn.
And I wonder what Hawkeye's going to do this turn. He can choose to clear this Armorsmith, and he will get an additional demon in the process because he gets an imp from the Imp Gang boss. He does miss 5 damage to the face, but
I don't know. Face is the place.
That's kind of made up for by the fact that he gets the additional demon with the Mal'Ganis in hand.
Revenge.
We're not quite low enough. Shamonahe is at 16. Revenge triggers at 12. So he only is currently able to use Revenge as a Whirlwind. But Whirlwind's still okay here. He could just Brawl here. This is a board where Brawl is actually pretty effective. If either of the damaged minions survive, he's able to just clear things up with that Execute. The one bad thing to survive would be the undamaged Imp Gang boss. Otherwise, he's just able to clear the board, either with Revenge or Execute.
And the damaged one is the one to survive.
It's the damaged Imp Gang boss, so he can choose to, if he so desires, he could execute this and then armor up. He decides to go with just as I call them, a naked Twilight Guardian. Oh, he is. It looks like he may be considering the Execute as well.
I think with the Grom in hand, especially with the Revenge to back it up, in case you do face down a Mal'Ganis, it may be worthwhile to execute this and not have to worry about it, because worst comes to worst, you do have an answer for the biggest thing that Hawkeye will have in his deck in hand.
It's just we see another sort of nose crinkle there from Shamonahe. Kind of sad that he just used his Execute while the Mal'Ganis comes down, and there's no activator for that Alexstrasza's champion, so
it looks like we will be seeing the Grom into Revenge to kill us off.
Grom may have to go in and give his life for the Horde here, taking out the demon from the Burning Legion. Seems kind of appropriate.
But then he's in a position where the Warrior is actually a bit behind, because in a top-decking battle, even though the Warrior's cards might be generally more valuable, the fact that Hawkeye will be drawing 2 for the rest of the game puts it at, I would say, quite an advantage in the top-decking war.
I mean, we've also seen Shamonahe draw several of the most powerful cards in his deck. As we were talking about earlier, the Dragon Warrior decks kind of lose a little bit of their late-game power to have cards like Alexstrasza's champion in their deck. So we've already seen Nefarian, we've seen Gramash come out of Shamonahe's deck. It's entirely possible that he is very, very low on these high-impact late-game cards.
Exactly, but at the same time, though, Hawkeye keeps drawing these cards like Haunted Creeper, which have very little board presence. Yes, you do have
Shield Slam not so good against either of those, though.
No, it's not. But the Warlock is getting himself to a very low point that Hawkeye may have to use these power overwhelmings just to kill off.
Just the removal effects, yeah.
Meanwhile, he's about to start losing the ability to tap. He's going to get to the level because, if I recall, Shamonahe has only used 1 weapon this entire game.
Yeah, I believe he used that Death's Blade. He never played a a War Axe or a second Death Spite. So there's lots of potential damage left in his deck, and Hawkeye has to be scared.
And Defender of Argus.
That's going to make it a little bit safer position.
That is a good card.
Oh, yes. So what do you think here? You could potentially use Power Overwhelming on one of these minions. Ooh, or even Juggler. All right. This is interesting. Yeah, Juggler, Power Overwhelming, kill that guy. Although I don't... Oh, this isn't lethal, is it? No.
No,
Okay.
now he's just using the Defender of Argus on the 2/1 and 3/2.
Right. Yeah, I was just trying to figure out the positioning wise. It seemed like using the Defender of Argus on. I guess it doesn't really matter tremendously whether it's on the Knife Juggler or the 3/2.
I think he particularly wanted to keep it off the Knife Juggler,
That
so that
makes
way
sense,
he can
yeah.
live and get a few more hits in.
And there's that weapon, but it's a little bit too late, I think.
Yeah, too little, too late. This armor up on the shield slam to kill this juggler will help, but again, Hawkeye still has a lot of damage on board. Is he facing down lethal?
No.
It looks like he has 6 plus the 4 from Power Overwhelming.
And Shamonahe finally decides to give up on the dream of drawing a
Keep in mind,
giant dragon.
we have not seen a Doomguard yet, and there it is!
As if on cue. Doomguard comes down, and that's going to close out the game. So Hawkeye is able to take the win, and I believe that's a series. Hawkeye wins 3-1 against Shamonahe. This is the first we've seen of either of these players in this tournament. We're going to be seeing at least one more of them on stage later today, and perhaps one of them on stage tomorrow.
Absolutely, I'm really excited